Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Dad to Dads podcast. And today I want to welcome Pamela Henry. Pamela, welcome.
Thank you, Robert, for having me on the show.
So look, you wrote a book, Sole Custody, Sparing Children from Divorce. And I wanted to talk to you about that. You know, I've read something this morning. It was about cancer. And it said something like 40% of all people in the U.S. will develop some form of cancer at some point in their life. Then I went over and I'm like, I wonder, what is it with divorce? Well, it's still around 50-50, that 50% of all marriages will end in divorce. And I started thinking, this is so timely. We do all we can to prevent cancer, right? I mean, we watch what we eat, we exercise, make sure we don't smoke, make sure we don't do this. But are we doing all we can to prevent divorce?
Not when 30% of people regret divorcing. That's what astounded me is when I ran across that statistic that 30% of people who divorced regret it. That told me there was more work to be done. I was one of them, married 16 years, divorced 16 years, intensely regretted divorce 5 years after it. And I went back. The reason I wrote the book is I went back to try to trace where I went wrong, but also to make use of my regrets. I figured I had the hindsight for a reason, that I was supposed to shed the light on the path for other people who regret divorce. If I could get to people while they're still married and share these lessons, it might expand their consideration zone so they have more time to think about the impact on the children, which is most people's regret when you think about the regrets overall.
Yeah. No, it's, I read through it and I appreciate you sharing it with me. I love the book, and I love it's God-based. I mean, you have scripture throughout. You're not afraid to talk about your faith. It's seems like it was kind of a faith journey for you as well, probably from divorce and then during this process as well of exploring, why people do get divorced. But, I wanted to, before we go into that, and I want to go back, I want to go into also the regrets. What are some of the regrets people have? But tell me about the name. It's Sole Custody.
Yes.
But it's spelled S-O-U-L.
Yep. Play on words, play on S-O-L-E, custody, just a divorce term. But what it means to me in writing it, when I first started trying to recover from my parents' divorce when I was, before I was married, the title came to me so I kept a journal called Sole Custody that was about trying to save my soul from divorce so I could heal, so I could get married. The plan didn't work, but I mean, it did work to the point where I was married 16 years. But the term meant to me that I had to gain custody of my own soul. Now, I didn't know that was going to mean later that the Lord was going to save my soul. Right. In the beginning, it was just, let me save myself from these two warring parents. Then I had to save myself from the internal war that every divorced child gets inside them, a deeply divided, conflicted state in their soul. And that has to heal and come together in their lifetime, or their own adult marriage will fall into that chasm, like mine did, in spite of my best intentions. But now, even having written the book, I have discovered even more things about how I was doomed from the start at my marriage. So the book is a real eye-opener. It's a real eye-opener, not only for me writing it, but anyone who reads it. I'm hoping that they understand the concept I'm trying to portray of escapist divorces. These are specifically people who want out of the marriage because they're trying to evade something in their own past that has nothing to do with the spouse or the children. It's a mystery to solve. So you want to be curious about why you're leaving, really curious about why you want to leave, because why you're leaving may not be the real reason you're leaving, as in my case, which is what I wrote about.
So it could even be some sort of transference from something in their past to putting it into their present relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
Hands down. I was able to, by writing this book, I was able to name the issue of my childhood that directed all of it. And then in the book, I also have questions for people to ask themselves those same questions. Basically, Robert, if I had taken my time, I could have gotten to those issues in the marriage and not thrown my husband and children under the bus. But I was really bent on trying to avoid that altogether.
You were really vulnerable in the book.
Yes.
I mean, very vulnerable in the book. And when we talked and then I read it and I was like, whoa, she's putting it all out there. Like, you didn't hide much. And
no.
It's impressive. And I think, reading that, others will realize, like, wow, okay. I mean, I'm showing you what I went through and here's where I am. But one thing I want to go back on, you touched on it, that your parents were divorced.
Yes.
How much do you feel that plays into future divorces, into somebody else? And now you're not doomed. If your parents get divorced, it doesn't mean you're going to get divorced. Or if your spouse, if you marry somebody that's had divorced parents, it doesn't mean, oh my goodness, we're definitely getting divorced. But how much do you think that plays into it?
I have changed my mind on this question, because I used to think, first of all, I used to think, oh, no, it doesn't. It makes you want to work harder not to. And I think that's true. But then when I divorced anyway, in spite of all my best efforts, I thought, whoa, maybe there's more to it. But in my case, it didn't have to do with repeating the legacy of divorce, making it inevitable. It was my mental state at the time of the marriage. After I wrote the book, I discovered that I entered into the marriage contract with my husband as already having divorced him. Let me explain. I did a ceremony in my therapy session. It was marital counseling, where I walked around him 3 times and said, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. As a cathartic, let me divorce you before we're married so that when we're married, it won't be an option. But I now look at that as like a curse that I put
in your mind.
In my mind, if I'm going to be already divorced him going into the marriage, what chance did I have? The other thing was about the adultery. Oh my heavens. I thought it was so innocent at 15 with the first boyfriend I had sexual relations with. We promised each other in the future, if we're married to other people, we can get together still and it won't be adultery because we decided it at 15.
Oh, wow.
That was the person I cheated with. I can't believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you think of that as like an innocent thing. It didn't dawn on me to work on that in premarital counseling. That's why I'm hoping my book reaches people at the premarital counseling phase. If you have any pre-existing contracts, those are 2 things that the Catholic Church would easily grant me an annulment over.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's true. So you said, you talk about 30%. The percentage of people that regret filing are 30%. What are some of the most common regrets that people have?
Okay. I'll talk about the 5 top regrets that I discovered. It differs from what is the general. Oh, do you want me to talk about my 5 regrets or general runs that we read about?
I want general, because everybody's going to be different, right?
Okay, yeah, they are.
And so just from your studies, what have you found, or roughly the top 3, top 5 would be great.
Okay.
But the top 5.
Is sadly, what people regret is not about the children. Because it really should be about the children. They regret the financial stress and the loneliness. If you think about it, that ignores the trauma of divorce on children. I was shocked to find that most regrets are of that nature. They were lonely. They couldn't find anyone better. And they were financially ruined. And to me, that's so tragic because it shows that they got divorced without even knowing what the impact of the children was. And then they really missed the whole point, because the regrets that I convey in my book, hopefully powerfully, are the enormous amount of sadness that is created for a child.
Yeah.
The enormous amount of anxiety, the cutting in half, if you're lucky to get 50-50 custody, you're cutting in half the rest of your children's childhood time with you and your time with your children and their other parents' time with their child, cutting in half, dishonoring God and your wedding vow and the spouse if you're of a religious nature, which I wasn't, but when I became, I really regretted going against God by divorcing when I became a Christian. And then passing on the legacy. When you come from divorce, it's salt in the wound to pass on that legacy. I mean, I didn't pass on family alcoholism, and I didn't pass on sexual abuse in my family, and I didn't pass on physical and verbal abuse, but I passed on divorce. This book is a way for me to pass on my lessons of what I learned, so that hopefully my kids who are not married yet they'll have the divorce legacy, but they'll have mom's lessons to go with it. I gave them a blueprint of what not to do.
It's interesting. In my spare time, I work, I lead a divorce recovery class with another leader, and we'll have anywhere from 12 to 16 people in there. It's a 16-week course, meeting once a week, and we have this book that we go through. And it's interesting, when you brought up the financial stress and the loneliness, that's number one. That's so common. I mean, I hear that on both sides, men and women, mostly from women, it seems like, but I hear that a lot with the loneliness and the financial stress over anything with children, over anything. When we do talk about regrets, do you have any regrets? And there are several in there that, in each class that, I just should have done this, and I regret getting divorced, but now we're divorced and I'm trying to find my way forward. And, and when we talk about that, that is, I agree with you. I think hands down, the financial stress and the loneliness is 1 and 2 for most people.
Yeah. And I'm looking at, ignoring the impact on the children, because again, divorce was all about me and what I wanted. And I thought that what was best for me was best for the children. And I couldn't have been more wrong. What was best for my children were their parents to stay together in my case. No domestic violence, no abuse. It's so confusing to children when you have a marriage that doesn't look like anything's wrong, because if you're internally trying to escape, a demon from your past, you can look normal like a functioning mom, and so when you divorce because you're trying to get away from yourself, your children's heads will spin. They will not know why. What? Nothing is wrong between them. You're right, because everything is going on in here, just me. And so I'm hoping too, parents who read this will understand the other parent better if they need any empathy for let's say you're the one being left or being considered being left. My book will help people with their compassion and empathy levels regarding what that parent might be going through. Right. Because if someone who's married to someone who's wanting out of a marriage can help shed light on some of the issues, now that can also backfire, because my husband was perfectly willing to stay with me, even though I had had emotional affairs. He was perfectly willing to stay and work through anything I needed to work through. And he was going to forgive me for those affairs too. And I still wanted out because I didn't want to face it. So you can't make someone face something. But if you understand, you're not going to do that thing where you blame yourself or it becomes so intolerable because you think it's about you when really it's about the person who wants out.
Yeah. And we're not, and I'm not anti-divorce. This isn't saying anti-divorce. I mean, I do think there are certain circumstances where divorce is extremely appropriate. You know, you've got to get out of this unhealthy, unsafe environment for you, for the kids. You have to. I mean, so I think I can say that for both of us. We're not saying that.
No.
But this is on those circumstances where there's probably some sort of trauma in the background that has been maybe undiscovered, hasn't been worked through, that type. And I think that's it's interesting. Again, I hate to go back to this course, but I teach. But when we go back and we look at childhood, there is so much of whether it's the coping, how they cope, how they process things, what they saw with their parents, and whether it's, well, times are bad, I got to go. Mom put up with this, I wish she hadn't, so I'm out the door. And I'm curious too. I want to ask you something. Do you think today, it's a lot easier to get divorced. Do you think today with society, it's, I don't want to say celebrated, but it's so much easier to get divorced. And it's, I remember, let me put it this way. I remember growing up, and I remember friends of my family that when the mom and dad were going through rough times, it seemed like they really, really worked hard and and you knew what was going on. And a lot of them did make it. And I'm not saying they had the perfect marriage, but it seems like now it's like, nope, I'm out the door. I'm gone.
Yes.
I'm gone.
I think we live in a really quick, instant, disposable society, and divorce fits that framework so perfectly. And it is really easy to get a divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially here in the U.S. I mean, we have people that listen overseas, and I know there's some places that have reached out, some people in other places that have reached out and will tell me, that they have to wait. I can't remember if it's 12 months or something like that to get a divorce, that the court makes them.
I know I wish everybody just more time to consider if they're considering.
So, you were talking about the impact on the children, and, I definitely want to explore that, but, you think too about the parents, the impact on the parents when the ones that don't have the children at that time, kind of I think you even talked about the longing that parents feel when they're not with their children.
Yes.
Do you want to kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. 20, let's see, I want to say the last 17 years, as a co-parent having shared custody, how I solved that problem was keeping a journal to each child separately. So I would write to them when I wasn't with them. And I love that because I was able to connect with them and keep a relationship going with them. And they'll have these journals one day that I wrote to them, and everything very appropriate. It's for them.
Right.
So it really filled in. That's the first thing I say to anyone who has shared custody. When you're not with your kids and you miss them, write to them or paint to them or do something for them, to them, that they will get, because you can fill in that empty space. That's an agonizing space where parents who aren't with their kids will turn to drugs, alcohol, relationships, all kinds of things. And I had my period of not turning to drugs or alcohol because I've been sober since 1988. But the relationships, the compulsive relationships, there's a reason remarriage divorce rates are even higher than first marriage divorce rates. Successive relationships sometimes don't work in the aftermath of divorce. And that is even more something you put your kids through and also yourself through. But to address that, it really to fill the space with the things that can build you up and connect you to your children. There are so many things we can do with and for our kids when we're not with them. So I try to empower people once they're on that end to go that route.
I had a guy on, I think it was the end of last year. Aaron was his name, or is his name. And, he was talking about just the loneliness, and when his children left, the silence. and how
Yes.
when they went back with their mom, the silence in his house, and how it was just eating him up, and how he turned, he kind of, like you said, you have some people that turn to, some people that turn to drugs or alcohol. Uh, he ended up turning, I think, to jujitsu. And he said, as soon as the kids would leave, he said, I was not going to be in the house. And when I came back to the house, I was going to be mentally and physically exhausted. So we went and started getting into jujitsu. And, and that was the way to kind of get over that silence and that loneliness, for that part. And he said, and then every time I feel that way in the house, I would go do something physical, whether
Yes.
it's go to the gym and roll or whatever it is. But
And one thing people overlook, that silence you just mentioned, this is
mhm.
what the child feels when they go to the other parent's house. Imagine feeling the absence and the silence around each parent you're not with, over and over and over and over and over. In this back and forth, we forget that the child constantly feels the coming and going and the coming and going and the abandonment and the absence over and over and over of one or the other. The silence for them is the lack of the other parent's voice in the home, alternately over and over and over and over. If you can imagine for a minute.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Since we're talking about children, let's I know you touch on the sadness the children feel and the helplessness that they feel with divorce. Do you mind kind of going into that more?
Yeah, the sadness. I can describe it as a broken heartedness. When I think of it myself, this is me on the cover of the book. You see this
Hmm.
face right here? This is
Yeah.
the sadness right here. This is my brother and me. Um, the your heart is broken because your mommy and daddy are not together anymore. And it's like your heart goes into a million pieces. I just read almost 900 essays of high school students on the impact of divorce on their childhood. And the common thread through all of them was their lives being shattered. What they're talking about is their heart being broken.
Hmm.
They all touched on it in a different metaphor through all the essays. That deep sadness, when you create that in a child through the trauma of divorce, you will set them up for possibly a lifetime of depression, anxiety, and that is a wound that will have to be healed. So
Yeah.
in our family, we have the divorce scars because they say it has healed, but they are scars. It will have to heal. It's a wound so deep, it has to heal.
We all have scars, and I'm not downplaying divorce. We do, and I think this is one thing. I am very big on therapy. I wasn't, but over the last several years, I've become very big on therapy. We do things. I play golf. I play tennis. There's no problem getting a golf lesson. There's no problem getting a tennis lesson to get better. But we, especially men, um, we won't do things to help us. And a lot of times it is getting better, but a lot of times we won't do things to kind of work through our past. My dad died when I was 10, and I had a lot of things to work through with that. And so there's so many things, even so much as at one time not wanting to get married, and because I didn't want to leave a spouse, and then didn't want to have children. Unfortunately, I do. Because, I didn't want to leave them young. And so I went and had all these tests done to, hopefully make sure I didn't die when at the same age my dad. But it's working through those things that we all have to. I mean, you're right. The divorce scars, the whatever scars they are, it's really being in touch with them, getting in touch with them, finding out what they are and how they're impacting your life. And I think you've really put it out there in your future relationships. And I think you really put it out there in this book of showing that.
First of all, I just want to say I'm really sorry for the loss of your parent at age 10. I was married. My children's father lost his mother at 7. And I wished for a second that I had put together, Pamela, if you leave your husband when your daughter is 7 years old, because the middle daughter was 7 years old, you are in fact recreating the abandonment that he had to go through when the mother was removed from the home. Now I didn't die, but I removed myself from the home as the mother. And if I had just thought, do I want to put my spouse through that original trauma he suffered all over again? If I had just had that thought, I might have answered, oh, I can't do that to him. But I did not have that thinking till 5 years later after the divorce. But could we think about the injury that we are doing to other people before we think we're claiming our freedom?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, again, we all have. I don't want to wrap us all into it, but the majority of us have some scars somewhere in our life, and it can even be. I just thought about this. Maybe your parents stayed married, but maybe they had an absolutely horrible relationship, and you saw that, and you didn't see love. You never knew what it was like, and I can go a little bit further than that real quick. There's a gentleman I know that his dad never told him he loved him, never told him he was proud of him. He's a new dad, and now he is a new dad. He's very worried, will he be able to express love to his kid? And because he didn't know what it felt like. And now I've seen him with his kid. He has definitely come over that and expresses it very, very openly. But the other thing was, when I was talking to him, he never saw his parents love each other. Never saw his dad kiss his mom. Never saw him pat her affectionately. None of that. And I asked him, like, how are you with your wife? And he said, oh, I love her to death. Does she know it? Yeah. And then once seeing them together, you see it. And so it is something to become aware of. And, a lot of these things we hide, right? We do hide in our lives.
There's one thing that those families don't have that actually stay together, even if they have a lot of trouble and fight and argue, but they stay together. The thing that they don't have in the end is the divorce wound. That's what makes it so distinctive, is that there's a particular wound associated with divorcing that they'll never know about. They didn't ever have it.
Yeah, and we're too afraid as well to go back, and it's too painful to go back and explore these things.
I thought I was courageous, Robert. I was a wimp. At the time, I thought I was so brave facing all my issues, but I was also facing them without God. I don't know what kind of chance I had. I didn't even have a religious internal support system until after the divorce. And so I was lacking that. So I would love to appeal to people out there who do have a religious foundation within themselves to draw upon that, to really find some strength to stay.
That's one of the things I loved about your book is
what was that?
As you go through it, and you kind of had the background, but then once you really dug in and turned to God, and you could even see, it seemed like that's when the healing really started to take place within you.
I saw the marriage through the eyes of God. I should have been seeing the marriage through the eyes of God on the wedding altar when I gave my vows. Yeah. No, I love that. And, I think too, for whoever's listening, I'm sure there's some people that believe in God that are spiritual and some that don't, but my thing is, if you don't, that's your choice. But if you're going through one of these rocky patches, give it a try. Yes. Yeah.
Give it a try. Reach out and see. It's not going to hurt. Give it a try, and who knows? You might see things turn around. You might have more clarity into things as well. And one thing I loved in your book too was you said marriage is to serve God, but I didn't look at it that way.
Right.
Tell me more about that.
How would I have best served God? It's by by choosing to stay in the marriage and commit to the well-being of my husband and my children. That's how I would have best served God and myself in the end. I mean, if I really wanted to help myself, I would not have escaped, because escaping is what really threw a wrench into my healing process. It took me so long to recover myself. Maybe it would have been only 5 months if I had stayed in the marriage as opposed to 5 years. I could have found Jesus while I was a married woman.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. So I want to ask you this. How, for those people that are contemplating divorce, are just thinking that's the only way out.
Oh,
Again, this isn't abuse. We're not talking about abuse. We're not talking about any of that, anything that's harmful. We're talking about, we've just come to a time where it's just not working. Maybe I've fallen out of love. It's not what it used to be or what I viewed marriage to be. What are some things people can implement? What are the strategies?
well,
What
I
would
know
you
this
suggest?
sounds contradictory, but I'm not a therapist, so I can be contradictory.
Yeah.
I think if you focus on, and I'm just going to use the metaphor, changing a diaper.
Yeah.
If you focus on taking care of your kids as a couple, do you know how underrated that is in our society? We look at like focusing on the kids is neglecting your marriage. That's how we look at it if we put our kids first, that somehow we're not putting our marriage first or we're neglecting our marriage. It's so backwards in our society. I submit to you
Interesting.
that if we focus on caring for our children, that our issues will work themselves out on the sidelines. But as soon as we put our selfish needs as adults first and foremost and think we have to figure all those out, the kids are going to get lost in the shuffle starting right then, But if we focus on, let me tell you the best part of our divorce process, okay? This is before we were divorced. This is the biggest clue, and this answers your question. We were in marriage counseling, and we said, what do we really want? Well, we really wanted another child. Well, let's have another child. So we were in the middle of our divorce discussions, and we sat in front of the therapist and said, we want another baby. And she looked at us and she said, what? But we were like, that is the answer. And you know what? We bought ourselves another 1.5 years where we were so happy and focused on bringing this other child into the world. And for a while, our issues just went to the wayside because we were focused on the children. We were focused on the children we wanted. But even if we didn't want to bring a third child in, we could have been focused on the children we had to help, to focus on what's important, because they are most important at this time in our lives. And that was the biggest clue, that it was okay to stay for the children, and you should. I just gave up again after that.
That makes sense. And then I see when you're talking about that, then if you're starting to look and, okay, what can we do that's best for the children? Well, we can do this. We can show them this. We can show them. I think from what you're saying is then you're going to start viewing it as, well, we need to work on ourselves too, don't we? We need to work on our relationship for the children.
Yeah.
And it just kind of waterfalls into that.
And in that strategy, yes, it would be good because you could continue in counseling. And boy, I wish I had spiritual marital counseling, either through a church or someone who would brought in faith. Like ours was very secular. And for those children, then, while you're focusing on being there for them, you're not negating that you are working on yourselves, but there is something about having children that challenges you to go deeper into your own childhood history. It brings out every deep, dark secret that ever was. It's no secret to anyone who reads my book. I talk about incest. I had a hard time separating my spouse from my father. That makes for a really bad sex life. Okay? If that increases as your child becomes the age that you were when you were incested, for example, you will not want to have sex with your spouse at all. And that's really bad for the marriage. But if you can take that into counseling and say, help me, I know this is interfering with my relationship. It's that much more important that I resolve it. Maybe the guy from the grocery store won't look so attractive.
Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That makes complete sense. That definitely does. So I want to ask you this. If you imagine you, as you're going through your studies, you probably interviewed close to even number of men versus women. Where do you find, do more men or do more women regret divorce? Or
More
is it
women
pretty
divorce men, so more women regret it because more women are the ones who are
the ones that
petitioners.
initiate it?
And so, I'm glad I'm a female, and I'm glad women will read this book because maybe I can reach more of them in that regard. Because if more are like me, then maybe they can be helped. And I'm not sure why that is. It might be a blessing to not have to look at all the issues. Whatever you were saying earlier, how men kind of are guarded, but maybe that protects them from the women who think they have to face everything and fix, and address all their feelings. Because then when you become, let's say you have an emotional affair, you think that's the person for you, and suddenly you're completely derailed from your own actual God-given married life. So maybe we're at a disadvantage because of that. But so yes, as far as the masses go, but that doesn't discount. Anyone could be the man in my situation in my book who is the one wanting out. And then with the understanding of, gosh, maybe I should stay and work on these issues. It requires so much courage, and the children, the big danger in an unnecessary divorce is that your own past becomes the thing that then harms your children just by not facing it. That's the only way I can put it. That's
so powerful. I mean, I hate to put it this way, but you kind of, pardon my French, you need to work through your own shit or you're going to pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, and that happens.
And that's why after this, it's like, well, when in my reconciliation attempts, well, it's fine that you realize your ways now and you understand why you wished you didn't regret, but spare me because the damage is already done. But I was grateful in the course of writing this book. My oldest daughter and my children's father both forgave me for everything. It was a beautiful moment. And readers have been contacting me saying that they asked for forgiveness of certain people in their families after reading my book. And that is better than making an Amazon bestseller list. When you can get one person saying that they asked forgiveness from somebody because they read your book.
Yeah,
that is success to me. Hello.
It definitely is. I enjoyed reading it. I appreciate how you were throughout.
Thank you.
Again, you put it all out there. It's definitely a book, not only for people. Honestly, I don't think it's just for people that are contemplating divorce. I think it's for people that have gone through divorce as well.
I've been finding that too. There's people that call me and say, "Can you please start a group on childhood divorce?" And I thought, I didn't feel called to, and I thought, wow, I'm collecting some people. There's no reason not to. A stepmother wrote me and said, I begged forgiveness of my stepchildren after reading your book. And I had no intention of bringing a message out in the book about stepmothers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of that one entry about my stepmother that she saw that, oh, wow, okay, I see how the kids see it. Because I hope this happened for you, Robert, when you read it. Mm-hmm. Could you see the divorce from the child's perspective when you were reading the book? That was my goal. I want people to see divorce from the child's perspective.
Yeah.
They can help their friends with. We all have friends who are divorcing. And they have kids and you think, oh no, not them. And now I have a book to give them, my own.
Well, I think whether you're divorced and you have children, or like a friend, I think it's extremely helpful for that. Just giving you insight as to what they've experienced, what they're feeling, and honestly, probably their fears moving forward of, well, my mom and dad got divorced, so I'm probably going to get divorced too, or there's a good chance I'll get divorced. It's a good guidance there for insight into what the kids go through.
And
from being small even on up to adulthood, I think.
Thank you for saying so. I wish one person had gotten in my face and said, don't divorce. I didn't have any voice telling me not to. And that's what I wanted to be, the voice to tell people not to in unnecessary divorces.
I think too, when people are going through something like that, you surround yourself by people that, a lot of times, people that will give you the advice you want to hear.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. It fits your agenda.
Yeah. And I think too many times you don't have true friends that will tell you, hey, you're being dumb.
Yes.
Hey, you're being selfish.
Yes.
Hey, have you thoroughly thought about this through the kids' eyes?
Right.
And so I think that, unfortunately, we as people, we go to who's going to make it easy, who's going to agree with us.
Yeah, exactly.
And so tell me this, I want to be cognizant every time. What have we missed? There's so much in the book, but what have we missed? What do you want to leave everybody with?
Oh gosh, what have we missed? This is just a question out loud. How do you give yourself more time? There's two people involved in a divorce. One person they both have to sign, right? They both have to sign divorce papers. Negotiate how to get yourself more time. Time is the only thing you can give yourself to ward off divorce. What else is there? Time will give you grace, space, new ideas, and give God a chance to work. And it buys your children some time with some married parents.
That's great. That's wonderful. How can people find you and find your book?
Well, if they go to Amazon, they can plug in the title, SOUL, Soul Custody, Sparing Children from Divorce. It'll come right up in 4 different formats. You can go to my website, soul-custody.com, soulcustody.com. But if you want to be in a group, just email me, soulcustody.pamela@gmail.com. And I would love to hear, I have some online classes through my city where we study the book. Anyone can join from anywhere on those classes.
I was not aware of that. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And what I will do also, I will put a link down so people can find you on there. Are you on social media, Instagram, any of that as well? Or
yes, I'm on both, and Facebook.
Okay. I will make sure to put links on there so people can find you. And look, I thank you so much for you coming on. I definitely do.
Thank you, Robert. It's a great topic, and I'm so glad we got to share it for all the listeners to hear, just giving them this almost hour together to really get some space going for them.
And again, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's I've really enjoyed reading it. I think it's extremely, extremely valuable for those that are divorced, and especially for those that are even starting to think about divorce. I think this is a must read that you need to pick it up and spend some time. And it's an easy read too. It's very easy.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much.
Well, Pamela, hey, thank you again for coming on, and thank you all for listening to the Dad to Dads podcast. You can find us on Apple or Spotify, as well as most podcast platforms. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Please leave comments. I read every one of them. I love receiving the feedback, as well as suggestions for future episodes as well. And we look forward to talking to you next time.